There's some things you only learn at competing at the highest level of competition, right?
Absolutely. Today, we'll talk about what I learned as my time as a D1 athlete.
You're listening to the Pathway Podcast, leading you on the path to fitness success. Here are your hosts, Jonathan Canales and Rex Andrews.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Pathway Podcast. I'm Rex.
And I'm Peyton.
Peyton's special guest on the Pathway Podcast today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, it's exciting to have you. Jonathan, unfortunately, out sick today, so we brought on Pathway Coach. You came in here originally, intern with us a year ago.
Yeah, started as an intern.
You went back and competed at Mississippi State in track and field and pole vaulting, right?
Yeah, I finished my last year a few months ago. Came back.
Yeah, and then been coaching people and doing awesome work ever since, right?
Yeah.
So we gotta shout you out, of course. So you're obviously an amazing athlete, competing in D1, right, Mississippi State. But you held the state record for pole vaulting for women, right?
Yeah, I had the school record. So I had it for a time, actually. Then one of my friends broke it. And then my senior year, I actually got it back.
Broke that record again.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So currently holding the record.
Currently holding it, yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. And so I know through that, you've learned a lot and you had experience a lot in athletics.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what got you into wanting to do fitness overall?
Absolutely. I mean, so I've been an athlete since, I could run or walk or anything. And so my passion for fitness grew really quickly from that moment. And then I kind of realized that, maybe I like it a little better than other people. A lot of people are athletes because maybe they're just good at something. But I realized pretty quickly that I really liked what we were doing and everything behind it. I realized there was kind of a science to it. And also being kind of a nerd sometimes in science, I was like, oh my gosh, you can combine the two and really get into fitness. And it's kind of how I got here.
It's crazy, right? How deep you can go of and just how far, because fitness performance isn't something that people have been studying forever. Right. So exercise science goes back mostly just in the 1900s. But how far people have taken it and the advancements of recovery and physical therapy and in just athletic performance is insane.
Yeah. I mean, even in the past few years, I feel like things are getting more and more advanced, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, in your guys' weight room, you were telling me they have all these
my gosh, yeah.
metrics they're tracking with you guys, right? Of output and force performance and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's to the point now where you've got computers in your weight room practically, hooking up everything to an iPad, and you'll do a clean or do this, and you're like, okay, well, this is how fast you did it. This was your force output. There's a million different things they tested, but it was really cool to see.
Did they also track your guys' form with video?
Sometimes, but usually not too much with video. Form would be more one of those things that they're correcting just on the daily.
What they see and
yeah,
kind of adjusting that makes sense. So you got into that, you're like, okay, cool, I want to go deeper. I don't want athletics to end in college.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So starting personal training, I know you have bigger aspirations. What's the end goal for you?
For me, career-wise, I want to go into physical therapy, so it kind of combines that fitness side a little bit along with the medical side. So doing this while I can and applying to school right now, hopefully that's where I end up.
Yeah. Physical therapy is awesome, obviously. Shout out Dr. Taylor.
Yeah,
love it. So we talked about kind of your journey, and what's cool is when I watch you training people, I see you bring a unique perspective because I know what it's like to compete, but I know that you've had so much experience in high stress situations, having to be at your best and having to compete. So we're there's three major things we want to talk about, right? How do you make sure that you're at peak performance? What have you learned when it comes to that? And then you had big setbacks, you had injuries.
Yeah.
So how do we get back from that?
Yeah.
And then the third thing is just that championship mentality, right? I'm sure the Mississippi State, they don't play with that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like that was the biggest thing I noticed being in a collegiate athletic setting is going from high school to college. It's elite athletes are just different mentally. Everybody has talent, but to get there and stuff, it's your mind that gets you there.
It's crazy when maybe you were were you the best in high school?
I was hanging up there.
It's okay to be a little, but so in high school, there's one or two people who are maybe at your level, right? But then you go to college and everybody's that level of athlete, right?
Yeah, and I remember I noticed it, especially in practice, because, in high school, I mean, you're in practice, everybody's complaining, nobody wants to be there, why are y'all even doing this? And then you get to college, and I was like, oh my gosh, people are focused, they're trying, they really want to be here. I mean, it changes the game for sure.
That's awesome. Is that the mentality that you brought into practice as well?
I think so, yeah. It definitely developed more as I got going. You know, I was gotten used to being a little, like, chill, you know? In high school, I was like, coasting through. It was easy. So I definitely had to step it up. But it was something I saw grow throughout my 4 years for sure.
What do you think was, like, the biggest aha moment for you for that? Was there anything that you just realized, like, something clicked and you're like, okay, like, I chose to be here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I just realized truly, like, what I was capable of. The biggest thing was, like, I learned that you had to just control what you could control and, like, let go of everything else. Because there's a lot of things with, like, sports and stuff that, like, it might go bad because it's raining one day or things like that. And I was really, really bad about handling stuff like that before. And I think the biggest thing that happened for me was I learned how to handle hard situations and just adjust. Okay, we had a bad day. What am I going to do from here? I'm not just going to, like, throw a fit. Like, that's not going to help me. How do you use that to get better? Things like that.
That's really cool. I think what's interesting, too, about a sport like yours where it's so individualized. Like,
yeah.
You're competing against yourself, basically. And how frustrating is it for you to go out and have, like, your best day, but somebody else just had a better day?
Yeah.
And you just don't take it home that day.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge, huge frustration. Especially pole vaulting is a weird sport. I had to learn that no matter how good you do, every meet ends in failure, right? Okay, so you're going to go until you miss 3 bars in a row. So no matter what, you're like, I PR'd today. You know, I did the best I ever did. But, if I just would have done better at this attempt, you know, then I would have done even better. So you have to learn how to let that stuff go. I mean, you just grow and get better, but
that's really interesting.
Take the positives away when you can, because otherwise you're beating yourself up every day.
Yeah, for sure. I never thought about that, of like how you have to fail for it to be over, right? So you just got to be frustrated with yourself. Like, I know I had that.
Yeah.
I could have done it. Man, that's interesting. Okay, cool. So talking about peak performance, right? What do you think were the biggest keys for you to being able to show up as your best when you were competing?
Yeah, learning how to take care of my body and realizing how much that will take me to the next level in my performance. You know, in high school before, you just kind of go do your practice and you go home and that's it. And I quickly realized with all the resources we had in college, how much you can, like, focus on your recovery to really get you to the next level. I mean, we're talking nutrition, doing it the right way, going to the training room before and after practice, take care of things with, you know, stretching, different modalities, foam rolling, whatever you can do. And then biggest one too was sleep. I mean, to do that in college too and get a lot of sleep, it's got to be a priority for you. So I quickly realized that I had to put that on my list of things to get done for the day, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. Was there ever a time where you were like, I'm just going to ignore this until it's a problem, and then, like, it became a serious problem?
For sure. And then all of a sudden I got hurt.
Yeah. Whoops.
Yeah. You learn your lesson, you know, you stop taking care of yourselves. I know, like, for me, the big injuries might not have been as so much that, but I pulled my hamstring a couple times, and I honestly know that it was because I was, you know, super sore. I was so tight, and I didn't do anything about it. Then I went and sprinted as fast as I could, and boom, it happened. So.
Yeah. I know they did a study too of basketball athletes, and they were looking at, like, people would have a sprained left ankle, and then they'd have, like, a tweaked right knee, and then they'd have they'd, you know, do something major to their hip and be out months.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, like, one little thing can add, because you just start compensating, right? Especially when you're trying to compete. You're like, I still have to sprint, even though this hamstring's bugging me.
Right.
So then we start compensating, and then, like, other things go wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I had so many, you know, little aches and pains here, and you think nothing of it. But then you quickly realize, like, I had all the resources I could ever want with all these trainers. And they're like, if you don't come see us, like, when it starts, then it's going to grow into something that it doesn't need to be. So I quickly learned to kind of get over myself. Before I was kind of like, I could tough through it. And it was like, well, you don't have to. Like, that's not the best thing for you. Yeah. Just go see the trainer and get some help.
It happens all the time with our clients too, right? Like, we see somebody and, like, you can see them and they're, like, moving their shoulder and, like, hey, let's take a second and stretch it out. Like, no, I'm fine. Like, let's just get into it. I promise if we just take 15 seconds here, loosen that shoulder up, we're going to get way more out of this, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's something people don't warm up and they don't stretch until they have to. And, like, something goes wrong, they're like, I probably should have been stretching more.
Yeah. You learn quickly. Also, the cool down. That was a new one for me that I had to start implementing, because I normally, you know, you want to finish and just be done.
Yeah.
But it's super helpful when you implement a cool down. You know, we just, like, jog a lap, start stretching, let your body come down. It'll help it recover a lot better.
So what do you what's, like, best practices for cool downs?
My favorite, I mean, we would finish, and we'd probably do abs at the end, which isn't necessarily cool down. And then jog a lap, and I'm talking jog like slow. Like, you do not have to go out there and race or anything, but you're jogging a lap. And then stretch as well as you can. Like, and if you know you've got issues in certain areas, make sure to hit that extra hard. Like, I know for us in track, hip mobility and things like that was super important. So we kind of had a little regime is what we called it, actually. I don't know why, but we called it that because somebody misspelled like resume or something. But
so it wasn't a regiment; it was a regime.
Yeah, we would call it our regime, even though that's like a military term, I think. Anyways, that's funny. We would do that for about probably 25 minutes.
Okay. Wow.
After practice.
So you get to practice, you warm up, which takes how long?
Our warm up was probably like 30 minutes long.
And then your workout is.
Depends on the day.
Okay.
Anywhere from, it depends on if the lift is included. The lift would be like an hour. We didn't do that like 5 days a week, though. Maybe like 2 to 4, depending on where you are in your season. And then say if we were pole vaulting a day, that'd probably another hour and a half, maybe a little running.
Okay, so you're looking at like 4 hours a day of training.
Yeah,
which,
potentially.
D1, like you guys aren't playing.
Yeah,
you gotta be ready. So yeah, it's like a part-time job while you're going to school full-time.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Pretty much.
So you're just talking about lifting. Strength training and track, like how do those go in? You talked about like adjusting it for your season. Is it as you guys are competing more, strength training kind of goes on the back burner? Yeah.
You'll kind of pull away as the season progresses, just because you kind of got to start feeling fresh again.
Yeah.
So by that time, it's also just transitioning. The volume and intensity is super high in the off season, but as you go into the season, it kind of lowers a little bit, but also you get to the point where it might be heavier, but it's going to be a lot less reps. And from that point, you're really just working on power. So by the end of the season, it's a little lighter weight, but you're trying to do things as fast as you can.
Explosive.
Really be explosive. Train those fast twitch muscles as best you can.
Yeah, and you were just talking about your workout. Well, it's a phrase that you use. I don't want to steal it. Workout recovery?
Uh-huh.
You want to use the phrase?
Which one?
Your workout's only as good as recovery?
Oh, yeah. I was tripping.
No worries.
Yeah, no, but it's so true. Like, your workout is really only as good as your recovery, because if you're not recovering, then that next day your workout's going to suck too. And, like, it's not going to be effective. Mm-hmm. You don't want all that work to go to waste by not doing what you can outside of your workout.
Yeah, and I mean, muscle's built while you're recovering, not while you're in the gym, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why it makes total sense that you guys would peel back on strength training. Because, like, hey, we've already built the strength. We've already got ourselves to this position. Now you just got to focus on performing, right?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that last month or two, my coach would be like, you're as strong as you need to be. Like, we just got to keep it for a couple more months.
So the maintenance workouts to keep that power high, keep your body, like, used to some kind of load.
Exactly.
But for the most part, we're just jumping.
Like, you're primed and ready. It's time.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So you had a big injury happen while you were competing. Mm-hmm. What happened?
So, yeah, my junior year, I ended up with a pretty gnarly back injury where I ended up with stress fractures in my L4 and my L5 and a couple herniated discs, but came back.
You just gloss over it. Like, that was a thing. No big deal.
Yeah, no, I don't recommend anyone. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So fractured L4, L5. So that's a broken back, in case anybody's curious. And then herniated discs. And did that happen from a jump, or was it like a cumulative injury? Like you just started feeling back pain?
Yeah, it was a cumulative injury. Most likely it's because when you take off in the pole vault, you kind of get into a back extension.
You like overextend your back.
Yeah, and when you're with a lot of power, like force going into it, and just do that over and over and over again, I think that was most likely my downfall. Granted, if I would have done things a little more correctly, it may not have happened.
Sure.
That's a little pole vault thing, though. Just don't be under if you pole vault. But yeah, I mean, some things you can't avoid. It was just one of those.
Yeah, I think it's if you're competing, if you're doing anything, you risk injury. If you're sitting at a desk all day, people blow their hips out all the time.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So you might as well use your body. So things are going to happen. And like probably 90% of us are walking around with herniated discs. It just happens the way like people exist. So you had this injury. Is this a common thing with pole vault?
I don't know that it's that common in pole vault specifically. I know people have a lot of back issues, so maybe. But from what I heard from the doctor, it's really common just in young athletes who do get in that extension position. Like he was saying stuff about like offensive linemen, who are
that makes sense. Yeah.
pushing people forward, their back bends,
Yeah.
things like that. So that position in young people, it becomes pretty common.
Gotcha. So it's just like not using your core to brace the whole movement.
Yeah.
And your back gets into it and something happens.
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
Yep.
So with that, though, you're talking about how basically you had too much power and strength and you broke your own back because you're just too powerful.
That's a good way of putting it, sure, yeah.
So you were talking about earlier, we were kind of like setting this up, of when it comes to performing, you were like, I can't focus on doing everything perfect. I have to focus on like what I do well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I realized pretty quickly to be the best, I mean, it gets to a point where you're fighting for inches, You're trying to just get a little bit better. And so at that point, it's like, okay, I'm doing my best to, of course, fix my weaknesses, but how can I really get the most out of my strength? So I kind of had to figure that out for myself of like, okay, I'm pretty fast, I'm pretty strong, but technique was like the hard part for me is doing things really perfectly. Technique, because pole vault's so technical. So there's a lot of ways you can do that. But I really figured out how to maximize my strengths to help my vault get a little higher.
That's awesome. I think it's a big thing, and I don't know where it comes from, but I feel like everybody feels like they have to focus on their weaknesses. Part of me feels like it's like standardized tests of like,
okay, yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
makes
when you're a
sense.
kid and you're like, hey, are you good at reading? Like, well, you better figure reading out. We're not moving on, right?
Right.
But you feel like you have to like be good at everything, but it makes way more sense to me to focus on like, what are you really good at? And like, let's just improve that.
Yeah.
Because if you have a natural tendency at something, if you're naturally like gifted at something, it's way easier. One, it's more fun to focus on things that like you see improvement in. And then two, so much of it is like being in a good headspace and being like excited about something.
Yeah.
And so if you believe like, I'm pretty fast, I'm pretty strong, let me focus on being faster and stronger.
Right.
Versus going like, well, I'm not technical. Because then I feel like if you bring that to the field, right, and you're like, well, these girls are more technical.
Yeah, exactly.
Then I feel like it's like you're just putting like a limiting belief on yourself, right?
Yeah.
I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he's just like, he's way overwhelmed. He runs a business, and he was so stressed out, and he's like, my biggest problem is that I'm messy. I have to figure out how to be more organized. So I'm just going to spend all this time organizing my whole office. I'm going to put sticky notes on everything. I'm not going to do anything until I figure out how to not be messy. Like, dude, you're 45. Like, I don't think you're going to figure out how to not be messy anymore.
Yeah.
Like, this just isn't your strength.
Yeah.
It's way better to just have, like, either pay someone to help you be more organized,
Right.
or just figure out a system that works for you, like, with what you're doing.
Yeah.
But if you don't let yourself focus on your strengths because you're like, this weakness is holding me back, then you're holding yourself back from so much growth.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me, along the same vein, my coach used to say, everybody wants to be the jack of all trades instead of the master of none.
Yeah.
And he was talking about just like in life in general, like figure out where your passion is, what you're good at, and like really pursue that. I mean, maybe if you're not so good at, I don't know, cooking, like, and other things, you don't have to be okay at everything. If you could be like really great at a few things that like, it's what you do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's like, yeah. If you, I don't know, like, what's a good example of that? I'm trying to think of, like, if I go see an awesome movie and, like, Tom Cruise kills it in Top Gun, and I'm like, man, Tom Cruise is the man. Someone's like, yeah, but did you know he couldn't cook? Like, I don't care.
And you're like, well, that's
like Top
okay.
Gun.
It's not his
Exactly,
thing. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't get in your head about all the specifics, I guess, right? That's a Bruce Lee quote, too. He said, what was it? Man. We're missing all the specific quotes. He said, it's like, I don't fear the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks once. I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
It's like that efficiency at something, right?
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, huge. So, talking about doubling down on strength, talking about coming back from injury. So, recovery. I know that was a long process. You were here while you were going through that recovery. last year, right?
Yeah.
What was that process like for you?
Gosh, I mean, it was long, so I had, it helped me learn a whole lot of patience, but it was good, because you also learn, like, how you can get better, even in a sport, in other areas of life, going through something like an injury or going through something like a setback. So, I got advice from coaches and mentors and stuff about how do I improve with an injury? And so they were teaching me about just, like, educating yourself about what it is you do. So I spent a lot of time watching videos, studying pole vault, and then was introduced to a lot of mental imagery, which is really cool. It's like I was pole vaulting in my head essentially over and over again, and like could see how that kind of like it tricks your brain essentially into how to do it right.
Yeah.
It was super cool, and like he had told me there was an athlete before me who like she was out for like 3 weeks before the SEC championships. Like she was a high jumper, hadn't high jumped at all. Like came back and PR'd because she was like doing mental imagery like all day every day. But yeah, all that to say, it's just like I learned a lot through an injury, but it's like it takes dedication to committing to bettering yourself through an injury, and not just like, oh dang, I'm hurt, I give up, you know.
Yeah.
I guess I coast for the next 5 months.
So you're sitting on the sidelines and you're watching people practice and you can't practice.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in your mind imagining yourself doing the jumps.
Kind of, yeah. So I usually would do it like in a dark room that's silent, like by myself.
Like meditative.
Yeah, so like that's what we were kind of taught to do, and like doing it as far as like, you know, I'm sitting there, you're trying to even hear what you would hear. So it's like, you know, there's a certain sound the runway makes, like when you're running, it's like, okay, am I able to make that sound in my mind as I go through this? Am I able to kind of see what I would see when I go upside down? Am I able to like try to convince my brain to feel it? Does that make sense? And I mean, it's hard. It was weird. I learned that I had a pretty tough time focusing. Like I could only do it for like 2 minutes at first.
Wow.
And before I felt like I was like super distracted or just like wasn't vaulting well in my head. It's so weird to explain, but I just kept practicing, and I really felt like my senior year when I came back that it had made kind of a difference.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think that's such a huge thing, and I think a lot of people think of it like when someone says that, they're like, oh, that sounds like yeah, there's a lot of things that focusing on your mental stuff, it's like you don't see the results, not physical, so you feel like, oh, well, like I don't really need that.
Yeah.
But your mind is 90% of it, right? Of
yeah.
Like just how your mindset going into something and like your belief in like what you're actually going to be able to accomplish, right?
Yeah.
Tony Robbins talks about that, and we've talked about the momentum loop before. Of like why does their potential not really equal their outcome a lot of times, right? It's because they don't believe that they can actually get the result.
Right.
And so by doing that mental imagery and like convincing yourself and doing it like that, where you're visualizing it and you see the bar and you see what you would see, and you feel what you feel, and like you're imagining yourself and you're tricking yourself into thinking that you're actually going over the bar, you're getting results in advance. Telling yourself like, yeah, like I've already done this 1,000 times in my head, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's even a confidence booster. It's crazy. Like your mind can't differentiate if it's real or fake, but it works because of that.
Yeah, it's crazy. So all that, you know, having such a strong mindset, being able to recover from something like a serious spine injury, and just being able to perform at a high level to set, you know, school records. How do you feel like that's transferred into you being able to help other people with their goals?
Yeah, I mean, I think it transitions well. Obviously, it's like in a different way, but you just got to learn how to like take your goal and kind of break it apart into different, almost like buckets or steps. You know, I knew I had to do recovery well. I knew I had to get my mind right and these same things. So it's like when I'm trying to help somebody else reach their goal, it's like, okay, what's step one? What do we need to do? How do we fix nutrition? How do we like prepare you and motivate you for that? So I feel like the best way to say it is just you learn how to break things down and simplify it. That'll help you reach your goal.
So you can like meet people where they're at and like help them understand what the next step is.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But another thing I've seen quickly is that like everybody's got an athlete in them. You just kind of got to bring it out. But some people, man, I've been super impressed. It's awesome.
Those natural tendencies. They just maybe haven't used them in a while, right?
Yeah. I mean, the work ethic, it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always crazy to me is when people like really take control of their fitness and they're like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to do this. This is overwhelming, but I'm ready to start. And then just having somebody on their team to motivate them and like be there every week is awesome, right?
Yeah, it's, I mean, the same story in my life. You know, if it weren't for coaches and mentors that have helped me along the way, I wouldn't have gotten where I did. And so everybody needs a little pushing or motivating or just help sometimes.
Yeah. And you are super motivating. It's been awesome to have you on the team.
It.
Yeah, for sure. And it's been great to watch you grow as a coach over the last year. And I'm really excited to see what you do with your clients going forward. But, you know, love what we do because it's awesome to be able to help people, you know, get in better shape and really be the best version of themselves, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's evident in their whole life. Once you get your health and fitness in shape, it's crazy.
It is.
Where it impacts.
Yeah. Well, cool. So, Peyton, again, thanks for joining us. It was great breaking things down with you a little bit. I hope people got some like good insights on you. You know,
hopefully.
You come in they come in, you kick their asses. And then, like, maybe they don't know the backstory, right?
That's what we do, yeah.
Yeah. So that's it for us this time on the Pathway Podcast, guys. If you want more info, go to www.mypathwaytraining.com/links. You can see all the stuff we got going on. And that's it. We'll see you guys here next time on the Pathway Podcast.